Packers jumping around. They rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line.
65 yards per hour trap. It might pop wide open, Rats.
It's in there! Yes, sir, Rats. Nice one, baby. Yes, sir, Rats.
Good evening, everybody. It is Richie Rich A here, as well as Wi-Fi Willie.
What's
we
up?
are representing the Wild West podcast. I am part of MHRT Network.
I am part of Raiders Rundown with Wi-Fi Willie.
Perfect. And we will be shortly joined by Coach Defense, who is representing the Chargers in the Wild West podcast here. And unfortunately this evening, Jacob, the representative for the Chiefs, had to attend an Admiral's dinner. So I'd like to first just take a brief moment to thank Jacob for his service, and hope he has a good time at the at the dinner and it all goes well. It certainly sounded like he had quite the commitment as a result of that. So I hope everything goes swimmingly. So moving on to kind of the other elements that we're going to go over today, one of the big things that we wanted to discuss on today's episode of the Wild West is just kind of breaking down OTAs, players in the OTAs that we think might do well, that kind of stuff. Between our two teams, actually, since we're going to be on screen for a little bit here, we're going through some of the most changes out of any of the team in the AFC West. What do you think is going to go on at OTAs, and what kind of news do you have with regards to those OTAs?
So it's nothing crazy. Like, there's nobody missing OTAs. It's not like some of these other teams in the league where you have the Steelers. I believe wide receiver Deontay Johnson is not attending the voluntary workouts. Then you got Deebo Samuel not attending the voluntary workouts, stuff of that nature. We don't have anything like that going on. We don't have Baker Mayfield not attending OTAs for the Browns going on. Everybody's showing up because it's a new coaching staff. You want to make a good impression. Every person who was a part of the Gruden-Mayock regime is almost sort of, a question mark. Like, are they going to be here in the future? We have second-round pick Trayvon Mullen, cornerback out of Clemson in the last year of his contract. He was a starter for us at cornerback. And I think he is somebody to pay attention to during training camp, during these future workouts and OTAs that are going to happen, because the Raiders did bring in some competition at cornerback this free agency. They could do so in the draft. They've had visits with cornerbacks, the top 30 visits, multiple cornerbacks. So it's like, does the new Josh McDaniels regime value Trayvon Mullen as somebody who could be a starting cornerback in the NFL, like Gruden and Mayock did when they picked him in the second round? So that is one person that it's like, I have a magnifying glass. I'm looking to see, could they move on? Could they trade him if they draft another cornerback? Because they literally picked up two cornerbacks in free agency with a trade, getting Rock Ya-Sin from the Colts. You trade Yannick Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin. You grab him from the Colts, and then you also pick up Anthony Averett from the Ravens on a 1-year deal for about $4.5 million. So it's tough. That's the one guy I'm focused on.
I think that's fair. I know you guys made a lot of moves. Now, the interesting thing, if I'm going back and remembering enough of McDaniel's history here in Denver, what separated him from what Peyton has done since he's been with us at the Broncos is he actually seemed to actually target guys that he brought in the draft, as opposed to what Peyton has done typically so far in his tenure. I mean, all of 1 year, but whatever, it is what it is. His history thus far has been, he's brought a bunch of people in, but then kind of gone after and targeted other players that they never brought in. And our last year's draft actually was a really, really good one. I was quite excited and stoked about it as a Broncos fan. So I'm pretty excited actually for this year's draft to see what year 2 of Peyton can yield in terms of the draft and his ability to pick up good guys, especially in later rounds. So I actually am wondering, those guys you were talking about bringing them in for draft visits. Those could be potential guys that you'll pick up because McDaniels has shown he's willing to do that.
Right, and that's the key thing with all of us who follow NFL news, and you as a Broncos fan following this. Do the visits matter? Is it all smoke? Right, because you want to use your visits wisely, because with the top 30 visit, the player actually goes to the team facilities sometimes, right, and has like a legit meeting with them, like they get flown out oftentimes, and you want to utilize that, but at the same time, you don't want anybody to know where you're going. And if you just have somebody, is it as simple for most GMs where if you just have their top 30 visits while they're drafting, you can guess where they're going to go? You're saying for Peyton, the GM of the Broncos, that's not the case.
Yeah, certainly what he did last year was he brought in a number of guys. And no, I didn't pay close enough attention to kind of roughly mock where their position was.
Right.
And then say maybe he brought them in, but then they got drafted too early for what he wanted to draft them. So I didn't go through that exercise in full. But what I can, and that's entirely a possibility. If they got drafted way too early from where he had them on the board, then that could be an explanation right there. But certainly with regards to what he had done thus far, he did not draft a whole whack of guys that he brought in for those visits.
Right. That makes sense. Coach.
What's happening, fellas? Sorry for the delay. Technology didn't want me to be great today, but I'm here. I wouldn't miss it for the world, man. I appreciate everybody that's been rocking with us in here, holding it down while I was trying to get here. But yeah, we're here now. Let's go crazy.
So I'm going to give you a one-liner from one of my favorite shows from the UK. It's called the It Crowd.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that. Yeah.
Did you turn it on and off again? The ever typical and often working tried and true tested methodology for tech, right? So
yeah, absolutely. When in doubt, pull a plug.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
yeah.
So we were just getting into the initial elements of the OTA, news from the OTA, and kind of how, I mean, Willie and I kind of coming from unique positions here where we're in effectively a regime change. So the Raiders are actually in an even bigger one than the Broncos this year. Mm-hmm. And we were just kind of talking about how that might look, what that might look like, and kind of going from there.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely say that for your guys' team is definitely an overhaul in philosophy. For sure. Like I said, a complete overhaul in coaching staff in both aspects. And I'm very curious how it's going to shake out. There's always a 50-50 chance that will work or will not. Some guys just don't fit the culture, and some guys fit in, they hit immediately. I'm very intrigued about what Nathaniel Hackett's going to do with him being a first-time coach and being an offensive-minded guy. Same thing with Josh McDaniels. This is his second time going around. He had a little bit of an issue last time in Denver, obviously, as you know, Rich. And we're trying to, that second time around, can it be better for him? I think he's in a better situation. Got a better quarterback, got a better supporting cast. And he being in the league this long, he kind of knows what the ebb and flows are when it comes down to how you build a team and a roster and things that fit your scheme and what you really want to do on offense. So I'm excited, man, for sure. I guess it's actually wild that we're the more elder statesman of the division in this moment, as far as your coach versus, we simply revolve coaches every 4 or 5 years. We can't seem to get it right, but I'm excited to see what Stelly's going to do in year 2. I'm just glad nobody stole Joe Lombardi away from us as far as being a coordinator, because we need to keep him. Because I've always said it's always been a great a line for me that I say that if you're a defensive minded coach, you gotta hit a home run with your offensive coordinator. You always do it. You have to have that, especially with the league, the way the league is constructed now. Big. when it comes down to the offensive coordinator. So I'm hoping that we keep Lombardi as long as we can in the team them up with Justin and our weapons, and we can make big things happen.
So actually, that's a really interesting point you made earlier in your comment there. So I have a new head coach in the Broncos. Willie has a new head coach for the Raiders, and you're now in your second year head coach in Staley there in the Chargers. So it's we're the three that are kind of in the newer head coaches, where you have Andy Reid that's been around forever and a day. And probably has his three favorite cheeseburger places there in Kansas City already picked out.
Right.
Jacob, you told me I had free reign, so I'm taking it, man.
Hey, man.
So with that in mind, I think this is actually an interesting question as it relates to OTAs. You have had time now in one full year of kind of gauging what the players you had on your roster were, what they could do, what they couldn't do, all that other sort of thing. And so is your head coach. Yeah. So who do you think that you have on your roster right now that you believe is, we'll say, on the way out? In terms of, that you believe your team doesn't think fits the current regime. And I think for us, like for Willie and myself, I think it probably is a little bit too early for us to make those types of kind of declarations, because we have to wait and see exactly how different players slot into the new offensive schemes. But I think for you, you're in a position where you could probably make some comments and have some declarations on that.
Actually, I got one prime person that I want to identify in that scenario, Jerry Tillery. I think I talked about him maybe last week about how he's kind of like, that in that in-between phase where he wasn't, part of Staley's group, but he wasn't really part of Lynn's group either. He kind of got thrown in the middle. They drafted him high, actually. He was a first-round pick. And I think that he's kind of rounded out into being, I guess you can say, a pass-rushing DT versus a run-stopping DT. He's very much more a sub-package and third down, specialist kind of guy, where he's more effective rushing the passer than he is stopping the run, as we all saw last year. One of the worst run defenses in the league last year, and he was a big part of that. So I think that, honestly and truly, with them bringing in Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson and Khalil Mack and those guys trying to build around this 34-style defense, I just don't really think he's a 34-style D lineman. So I think that not exercising his fifth-year option and things of that nature, that kind of is a make-or-break year for him. And he might be more of a specialist guy. You might see him more on third down and such, and maybe he can make his hay in that facet. And if he can do that, then maybe he'll stick around. But if he can't, I don't see them paying him after this year, because he doesn't fit the scheme.
Well, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess the person that I would say on our team who's sort of like that, I feel like you mentioned Tillery being a first-round pick. Cleveland Farrell is just this thing that like nobody has really committed to. Yes. You got Paul Gunther, he was the D coordinator when they drafted Farrell. We call him Chris Christie because he looks like Chris Christie. And then Gus Bradley just benched him. And then so literally like two coaching staffs have rejected him. And then people are now thinking, is Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator of the Raiders, going to get something out of Cleveland Farrell? I just think he hasn't found a home with any defensive coordinator, and that would be one guy that we clearly don't exercise the fifth-year option. And that could be something. We could be talking about fifth-year options because literally in 12 days, our teams have to exercise them. And I mean, do players get pissed off if they don't get their fifth-year option exercised? What do you guys think? Is it an insult?
That's a good question. I love that question.
Yeah, I love it.
I love that question.
I'm gonna let you go first because I have a hot take, but go ahead.
I'm gonna say no, and I think that the players much rather get long-term security, and by not having that fifth-year option executed, it gives them an opportunity. This is kind of one of those betting on yourself type comments, which is if you don't get that fifth year exercised, then you then have the opportunity of having another deal when you are younger come up, which is better for you as a player. So I think ultimately any player would prefer to not have that fifth year exercised, get a long-term deal sooner, and go from there. Now, the one thing that's very strange to me is why more teams aren't trying to force their quarterbacks into those fifth-year options. as an attempt to further stretch out a cost control deal at a position that is obviously the most expensive position on a team, assuming you find your guy. But either way, we're talking about a D lineman or other positions. I think that they would much prefer to not have that 5th year.
Yeah. It really just depends on the position for me, holistically, right? But if you're Baker Mayfield, I'm sure you're going to hold true and hold on to the $18 million that you're guaranteed, right? And if you're in his position, you're kind of a fringe guy and you hadn't really hit yet. But if you're a quarterback of I guess you can say proven entity, and they know that that's your guy. I'm the quarterback of the future. I'm the franchise. Guys like Josh Allen and Kyler Murray in a situation, they want to be paid early. They don't want to sit on that 5th year option because they know what's next. If things don't work out, if things go south, or I get hurt in my 5th year, then guess what's going to come out next? The franchise tag, and they don't want to deal with that. So we look at Dak Prescott, does he or Kirk Cousins in the franchise tag world? They just want to deal with the drama. They want the security, especially with it being such a high impact position where most quarterbacks are mobile now. You run the risk more so of getting hurt. So you have to be able to get your money early and often. And with quarterbacks playing longer as well, I want to maybe parlay this into 2 or 3 big time deals. I want to be in the Aaron Rodgers conversation where I haven't gotten $200 to $300 million, $200 million deals before I'm done, versus waiting, 4 to 5, 6 years in my rookie deal. And then I'm getting maybe one long-term deal, and then I'm done. So, it just really just depends on the position. But holistically, I think I share the same sentiment with you, Rich, that if you want to I guess you can say solidify yourself as being a player and get your money, I would say, I don't want to get to the point where I'm at the 5th year option. By year 4, I want to be signing 4 to 5 years, and get my bag.
Right, yeah, that makes total sense. Ryu Reaper, JM not showing up today is a metaphor for the Chiefs not showing up this season. Some shade happening. Jacob's a great guy. He'll be back next week, most likely. But shout out to that, though. Hopefully that happens for us. But, Coach, though, picking up off what you're saying, and both of you guys are saying, yeah, ideally you do want to turn that into a deal, especially the fact that quarterbacks are playing longer. But there are particular positions where it's not the case. Now, running back is the one that I'm focused on, obviously, because Josh Jacobs' deadline is coming.
Yeah.
And so, just your guys' opinion, if you're a running back, would you not prefer the 5th year option? Because running backs typically don't get long-term deals. We got the Dalvin Cooks out there, the Christian McCaffreys, but Alvin Kamara's. But for the most part, running backs just get 1-year deals. Why would you not want the 5th year option where you would get a pretty good salary usually?
Yeah. I guess maybe running back is maybe the one position that you truly can try to stretch out as long as you can. Because I'm seeing a very big time trend where running backs are not only getting drafted high, but they're also getting being on the team for one stint and then they're gone. Like they'll get drafted and they'll play 4 years and then I'll let somebody else pay you. I'm not paying them a long-term deal unless you're through a threat like a Kamara or a McCaffrey let's be honest, the McCaffrey thing is kind of is a buyer's remorse situation because he's been hurt. They paid him all that money, but he hasn't produced because he's been hurt the last 2 years. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Willie. Yeah.
And then a lot of people are thinking, is Saquon Barkley on the block?
Oh, man, yes.
Because that's another situation where he's the best type of running back you could ask for, but, he's not healthy.
That's a question for another day. But whose fault is that? Is it the Giants' fault or Saquon's fault? The
right.
Giants so bad that he just can't produce, or is he just not? He's not hitting his stride.
Well, the other question is what you don't know behind the scenes is with some of these guys, they have been the best at their position, no matter where they've gone their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a rather unique individual, often to have enough people around them to tell them to stop it. And I say that broadly, I'm not trying to be crass or rude towards the younger guys. I mean, these guys are elite. Don't get my words kind of crossed here at all, but they need guys around them to tell them to stop it, and they need the right people in their corner to say, you were really good and you still are, but if you don't continue to push yourself, you are going to end up in that could have been great category. And do you really want to be looked at that way? And one of the things that some of these guys are going to need to start doing, especially the younger guys, right before they come into the league, is to start to get themselves into a body regime. They need to start getting themselves into a position where they're not going to allow their body to break down, whether it be acupuncture, that kind of stuff, because they need to allow their bodies a cycle to continuously go through. The one guy that I look at in a position that is in a grinding style position that just had massive longevity and played at a high level for a long time was DeMarcus Ware from the Broncos, who was originally with the Cowboys and came over. And then you had another guy in the Steelers and James Harrison who did something similar. They are in very, very high contact positions on the team that are grinding, that have a lot of like really heavy pressure on their joints and whatnot. And both of those guys had regimented regimes in terms of body recovery.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, taking care of your body is a skill. It definitely is a skill. And I think we're seeing more of the TB12 methods and these new training methodologies coming out that people are, making their way as far as protecting their bodies, spending millions of dollars on it. And it's becoming a thing where, they want to be able to play longer, be more pliable, be more, have more elasticity in your muscles and things of that nature. So you can definitely play longer because, one wrong injury, especially early, can derail your whole career. It'll just never be right.
Yeah. If I'm a running back, I'm contacting Tom Brady. I'm going to figure out what kale juice he's using just for the skin alone. I mean, he's got some young avocado toast.
Yeah, all of that. I think all of that.
Or sorry, was it avocado ice cream? I don't know. It might have been both. Who knows?
Might have been both. I think it's both. I think it's avocado toast in the morning and avocado ice cream at night before you go to bed.
But if I'm a running back, the main guy I want to hit up is Adrian Peterson. Like that guy, he just can't. He can't be done. Like he might even play somewhere this year.
He's a freak of nature, though. Like he walks out of the bed with a six pack. I mean, come on. He just, he's a freak of nature. That's one thing. Even though he had a couple of injuries early and he bounced back, I think he's the quickest person I've seen come back from ACL injury in ever. He got hurt in. I want to say he got hurt in December. He was back in September. I mean, that's amazing. So that's maybe a one-off, but I get what you're saying for sure.
And he's in a high collision position.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just that he came back so quickly. That in and of itself is remarkable, but he is in what you could arguably say is the highest collision position on the field.
Right. And he didn't shy away from contact. He
didn't.
He embraced it. Like he looked for it. Like if you didn't hit me, we got a problem. Kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely something we need to take a page out of his book or just siphon his blood so we can create another one.
we gotta clone this guy. but and also like even though he's getting paid a veteran minimum, when he was on the Saints in a backup, he was yelling at Sean Payton to get in. Remember, there's like that viral video where he's like whispering at Sean Payton behind his back saying, "Put me in." It's like because most guys would just try to like collect a check on the vet minimum and just be a backup and just let Kamara take all the reps, let Latavius Murray take all the reps or whoever they had as a spell there. But he was trying to get in too, which is like even crazier.
Right. That's the love of the game right there. Love of the game.
And ladies and gentlemen, those who are joining us right now, thank you. We each have our own channels that you can find below in the description of this video. We are all fans of the NFL, and frankly, the AFC West, we all play each other twice a year. So it is always great getting additional information on your opponent. Links to each of our channels can be found in the description. Please like and subscribe to all of those. And I know I've been over on Willie's channel a couple times, and it is always great getting really, really good information on both Chargers, Chiefs, and Raiders information, because you can never get enough football, and getting good information is always a good thing.
All right.
For sure. One thing I was going to ask you guys, I don't know, just about, I mean, Baker Mayfield is something that I feel like should be talked about, just our reaction in the general NFL. Oh, Love DC Forever. Shout out to Love DC Forever. I love that screen name. You know exactly where they're coming from. But so where do you guys think Baker Mayfield lands? Because, he had injury problems last year. I'm personally more sympathetic to Baker Mayfield because I think he played with an injury last year. The team, look, I think Deshaun Watson's better than Baker Mayfield. Let me first say that. Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield played injured last year. The stats are misleading because he was super messed up. Now all the teams seem to have their quarterbacks. We're all sitting fine in the AFC West. We all have our quarterbacks. Where does Baker go? Is it just Carolina?
I have a problem with the Carolina thing because what do you do with Sam Darnold? Because, I mean, if you honestly truly want to weigh your options as far as productivity, who's better, Sam or Baker? I feel like it's a push.
Baker.
Baker's better than Sam?
Sam's more healthy, though. He's not coming off a surgery.
This is true. This is true. And you never really know truly, especially we have issues with your arms and your throwing shoulder that do you truly bounce back from that correctly? I mean, I think Jim Garoppolo is a question right now with his arm strength. Baker Mayfield is a question with his arm strength. So are you going to bank on the fact that he's going to be 100% and ready to go and ready to win you ball games? Because let's be honest, Matt Rule's on the hot seat. He got to win games. And especially if he goes out and gets Baker in whatever capacity, trade or free agency, whatever, he goes out and get him, and he goes 4-12. You can see you later. He out of here. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure about it. I just don't think it's a true landing spot for him outside of maybe Seattle, but Seattle doesn't seem to want him. I think Seattle's probably the best fit with somebody who's really in desperate need of a quarterback. But again,
Totally.
I mean, they don't want to pay the $18 million either. That's the issue. Because right now you could probably get him for like a 6th-round pick. They will probably almost give him away as long as you take on the $18 million. But nobody wants to pay the $18 million for his talent levels. That's telling to me too. When teams don't want to pay your freight, that tells me a lot about what they think about you in retrospect. So,
but just to clarify, isn't it the case that if the Browns released Baker and a team picked him up, they would have to pay like 70% of that $18 million, and then the team would pay the rest? So they might be forced to have to trade him, so that doesn't happen too. So they don't have to release him.
Yeah, there's a percentage. I think Odell was in a similar situation where they released him, and the Browns paid a part of his salary, and so did the Rams. So hence why the Rams were able to get him with their limited cap. So yeah, there's a percentage. I'm not sure what the percentage number is, Willie, but I definitely think there's a number there. So it's going to cost them regardless. It's just a question of do you get anything for him at all? And again, the market's not big. What do you think, Rich?
Well, I'm looking at what the Browns did with Watson, and I think the Browns effectively banked on this. So at first, I think everyone was looking at this and saying, oh, look what they did to try and insulate Watson. Something tells me that the Browns had some insider information in terms of some of the trial stuff. I mean, you're talking about some of the most powerful and well-connected individuals in the world that own NFL teams here, plus the commissioner who is right up there as well. So when you're looking at people like the owners within the NFL, I actually believe that what probably occurred here was they had an idea that Watson's trial was going to get bumped to the back end of the year, and that they knew that they were going to likely need to probably release or at least bank on potentially releasing Mayfield so that they can absorb the $19 million upfront this year, which is the $1 million base salary and salary for Watson in this particular calendar year. And then the rest gets pushed to the back end of Watson's deal, which kind of balances things out, right? In terms of what you would ultimately pay for the quarterback. And then it allows them to front load other deals on their roster with the Browns in terms of with Mayfield and the other stuff. So I think that's really what's probably gone on here, personally, in terms of what I think is going on this way. And I think the Browns are just preparing that they may just have to outright release him.
And so
I think that's where we're headed. I really do.
In your opinion, Rich, and your opinion would be good on this, which is like Seattle, obviously, is a suggestion that Baker floated himself on the podcast he was on. He was on that You Never Know podcast with Mike Period or whatever this guy's name is, some hippy dippy Austin Texan drinker guy. And he said Seattle. And you're a Denver Broncos fan. You know Drew Lock intimately. You know him better than us. Drew Lock versus Baker Mayfield. If you're the Seattle Seahawks, what do you do in that situation?
Drew
Then
Lock.
you still, huh?
Drew Lock.
You take Drew Lock over Baker Mayfield still.
I do.
Wow.
I do. And that's not me as a Broncos fan trying to like elevate a guy that was on our team. So Drew Lock's best year with the Denver Broncos was with an outside zone scheme where you had that as a general running style and running the football and that as an overarching piece, I believe is where Drew can actually excel in. I also think that a head coach like Pete Carroll, who intentionally limited Russell Wilson, which I think was a mistake, but I think by doing that with Drew Lock will actually help him because you're going to you're going to help control his nerves a little bit in a game by not having him have to be the person to do everything all of the time. Now, they need to fix their offensive line in the worst way, and I think they can help do that this year if they start drafting linemen and stop being so stubborn about it. And if they continue their running the football and their running ways, if you will, in Seattle. So I think Drew Lock would probably be the better fit. And I also think Drew Lock has a bigger arm than Baker Mayfield. I truly do. I actually think he has a stronger arm, which actually opens up certain throws on the field. Now, Drew Lock has made some stupid decisions in terms of throwing the ball, which I'm not going to deny. And let's be honest, you guys saw it too, because he did it against you. But at the same time, I also think you can argue that Mayfield has made many of those same mistakes, if not more egregious mistakes when throwing the ball. So
especially last year, yeah.
Right. So I think when you weigh everything and you actually truly compare those quarterbacks, I think Drew has the much larger upside compared to Baker Mayfield, given the fact that he has started less. And I think you'd want to go with Drew Lock in that situation to see what you have, because you do not want to make the same mistake the Broncos did.
I have a question about that then. So because Baker Mayfield is so polarizing at this moment, like he's the talk of the town, number 1 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner, all this stuff, Drew Lock being a mid-round guy, you don't think the pressure to start Baker over Drew won't be a big thing for Pete Carroll to decide on?
It might be, but he has the cachet. Like, let's be honest. The Seahawks had 2 choices. You get rid of Pete Carroll and you keep Russell Wilson, you build around Russell Wilson, and you go from there. Or you go the other way, which is what they did. It said, we're keeping the really old head coach who hasn't won much lately.
Right.
And we're getting rid of Russell Wilson. So I think the Seattle Seahawks have kind of shown you their hand a little bit in terms of what they think of who.
That's true.
And so I think if you're going to be honest, who's going to have the cachet to do what they need to do? I think Pete Carroll is riding the coattails of his Super Bowl appearances and win, and has basically got that cachet within that organization to say, no, Drew is the starter or Baker's the starter, depending on who he feels is appropriate, and can go forward accordingly. Just in my opinion, I think they would make a mistake by not starting Drew Lock over Baker Mayfield.
Okay. The flip side is I think the reason why they picked up Geno Smith, and I know it's a $3.5 million, potentially $7 million, Geno Smith, backup QB for Seahawks. I think having multiple QBs that could start, same reason why the Dolphins have Teddy Bridgewater as a backup, is because if things don't work out, the coach can scapegoat the starting quarterback and then have another guy in there. Maybe you get some competitive wins towards the second half of the season. So you could do that if you're Pete Carroll. You could have Drew Lock start the season. If things don't go well, you can kind of scapegoat him, then start Mayfield. Maybe you win some extra games, or start Geno Smith.
Right.
There's that too.
There's always the age-old adage: if you don't have one quarterback, you have more than one quarterback. You don't have any. So you got to look at it from that perspective too.
That's true.
You have more than one, you don't have any. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I'm curious. But again, I'm with you a little bit, Willie. I feel bad for Baker a little bit, but I felt bad for him until he started opening his mouth. Because the whole, he wears me out with the whole arrogance thing. Like he just thinks that, he's better than he really is. That's what rubs me the wrong way.
He seems like an arrogant guy. He seems like a guy that you would like get into an argument with on accident. Like he does have this tense feeling that you could just feel, you know what I mean? And we're all older than these players. So I feel like we're able to see some of these characteristics really easily just from living longer. Yep. But the thing that I was going to say, I almost lost track. Oh, Drew Lock. He gets his revenge against the AFC West this year. So we do have to watch out for Drew Lock. He knows us intimately. I don't know if the game's going to be in Denver, but he's going to be heated for sure there.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think if he actually is able to throw for a touchdown, he may do the Buzz Lightyear thing that he kind of became somewhat famous for in Denver towards like the bench or something. Drew Lock certainly has a bit of an edge to him.
Kind of like Baker. He's kind of like Baker in some ways with those.
He is, but he's a little bit more reserved, and certainly he's not going to come out in public and like Drew Lock will do that in a game as kind of like a collar pop. But he'll go to the podium after the game and he'll be completely professional whereas Baker will do the collar pop in the game and go to the podium and basically say, "I told you so, I win."
Or not even show up.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, he's done that.
That's the difference kind of between, I think, Drew and Baker. Whereas Drew will kind of make a point of saying, "Look at me, I did okay in the game when it matters, where it's more appropriate to do so." But then when he's off the field, he is quite professional, and I think he does deserve credit for that. He really handled himself well when he was in Denver, despite the fact that he was thrown under the bus and it was backed over him like multiple times. So
yeah, he handled Bridgewater well.
Credit. I think he deserves credit, right?
Yeah. The Bridgewater situation and the fact that like they had to kind of go in and out, and he wasn't salty about that. And I don't know what he's going to do. If it is more of a offense that leans heavily on the run, maybe he'll do well because he still could scramble. Like Drew Lock has always been good at scrambling, and that's why I put $100 money line on the Broncos against the Chiefs in the last week of the season and lost.
Yeah,
and I did have a few beers beforehand, but I had faith in Drew Lock. He had a good first half.
He did.
That's typically where it ends. So he has a one good half, and then it just goes downhill from there.
Yeah, he did.
The fire, but it is what it is.
Yeah, he did. And so looking ahead kind of to where we're at coming into the meat and potatoes coming up of the offseason, between the four of us or three of us here, we'll just pretend that Diet Andy Reid is to the bottom left of me.
Diet Andy
is who do you think on your team is going to be a breakout player in OTAs this year, just overall, and perhaps even a breakout player just because of like changes or whatever the case may be?
Okay.
So Willie, maybe we'll start with you.
Okay. I'll have two. I'll do one on offense, one on defense, just because, it's hard to make up your mind. The one on offense, I will give it to Bryan Edwards, wide receiver. I think Renfro is going to, get some attention. Devontae is going to get some attention. So is Darren Waller. Who's going to be that kind of fourth option when you're looking at receivers, really the third option? Bryan Edwards, I think, has been pretty good. He's just always struggled with injuries. He struggled with injuries in college, and it happened with him in his 2020 rookie season. He was overshadowed by Ruggs. A lot of people didn't recognize him. But when you watch him in key games, I'm thinking against Denver at the end of the 2020 season, against the Ravens in week 1 of last year. He's really been clutch in certain moments. So I think he might be a guy that can surprise a lot of people, especially in OTAs. And they brought in Demarcus Robinson of the Chiefs to kind of compete with him, it seems like, for that number 2 outside wide receiver role. And we'll see what happens there. On the defensive side, I'm going to go with Bilal Nichols, defensive tackle, former Bears player. Raiders invested heavily in him, about $6 million a year. And he's kind of. I did some research. I kind of like to look at what other fan base, how they talk about Bilal Nichols. How do Bears fans talk about Bilal Nichols? And they really do like him. And he's had some mic'd up moments. He's been a fan favorite for a little bit, and now he's kind of finally getting paid, really, after being drafted. And I think he's super hungry for the opportunity. And we've been desperately needing a solid defensive tackle for several years. So I would definitely highlight those two guys.
Okay. For the Chargers, I would say for sure on the defensive side, especially with the addition of J.C. Jackson, I think it's Asante Samuel Jr. I think he's going to be a breakout player this year for us. I'll give honorable mention to Nasir Adderley. I talked about him last week as well as being a underrated free safety, but for sure Asante, because one, he's not going to have to guard the best receiver most likely in large space. He can play his natural position of being outside corner. Like I said, a year older. Being mentored by JC, so I think that's going to bode well for his ascension. And again, he's a second generation talent, so he knows the nuances of the games and what the do's and don'ts are. And assuming he's hit the weight room a little bit in all season, which I hope everybody has definitely said to him that he needs to do, put a little muscle on, and he'll be a breakout player on the defense, especially with having such a much improved pass rush. When you have a better pass rush, the DBs tend to eat, because the ball comes out faster. So I definitely say that he's going to be the first one that's going to absolutely positively be a breakout guy. On offense, assuming that we don't draft a receiver first in the first pick, I would say it's going to be Gerald Everett. I think that he's going to be the first consistent tight end since we've had since Hunter Henry. That's going to be a safety valve target and a red zone target for Justin Herbert. With him, he having to focus on Mike Williams and Keenan on the outside. Him being that athletic and a very hard to tackle tight end, position in tight end. He's going to be the one that's going to be benefiting from the single coverage in the middle of the field. So those are my two guys.
Quick question though. How did Chargers fans and maybe yourself, how'd you feel about Jared Cook? Because he was a former Raider. He was here last year with them. He's older now. I mean, it's his later years, but he's been solid with the Rams before too.
There's a reason why he's bounced around all them teams in the last 4 to 5 years, and he doesn't stick long because his sense of awareness and his effort at times can wear you out. It really can. It's one of those things where you love him for his athleticism and his speed, but he disappears. I mean, I would literally put at the feet of him losing the Patriots game for us because he ran the wrong route. Justin was expecting him to turn in. He turned out and he threw a 6, as a matter of fact. It might have been JC that picked him off. Now I think about it. No.
He's done that on the Raiders too. He's done that a couple of times.
Right. So, his sense of awareness it bothers me, especially being such a wily veteran. You shouldn't be that lacking in awareness. So I definitely not a fan.
So my biggest breakout player, I think, on the Broncos on the offensive side of the ball is going to be Jerry Jeudy. I actually think that one of the things that Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater both struggled with, and I was actually surprised with Teddy. Actually, I'm just going to be honest. I was surprised with Teddy because in OTAs last year, the one thing that was mentioned all over the place was that when Teddy Bridgewater was throwing to Jeudy, he was leading him properly to allow him to accelerate out of his breaks and his route running. And then as the season went on, Teddy just stopped doing that. And so Jeudy did not have that opportunity to catch the ball in stride and allow his route running ability to really be put on full display. So in my opinion, I think that that's something that Russell Wilson excels at. You see that with DK Metcalf. You see that with Tyler Lockett. So I think we're going to see Jerry Jeudy finally have his talent showcased at the NFL level properly. And I do have 2 caveats to that. One, he needs to be able to continue to showcase and improve his contested catches. At the NFL level, Jerry Jeudy has struggled with that even when the ball has been thrown in the right place. And he also needs to just get more comfortable in what you say is the physical battles of catching the ball. So what I mean by that is when you're going across the middle and you're going to get hit, that's one of those physical catches. So I'm looking over to Willie here, and I'm looking at a guy like Renfro, or I'm looking at what you saw from a guy like Wes Welker or even Julian Edelman. Welker obviously with the Broncos and the Patriots, and Edelman with the Patriots. Those guys caught balls even when they knew they were going to get literally just blown up, and they never dropped it. Whereas Jeudy has had some struggles in the past where he has kind of not stretched out when he knows he's going to get hit or not done some of those things. So he needs to just get more comfortable in getting hit like that. On the defensive side of the ball, I have literally a bit of a coin flip, and I'm going to go with just one specific player. I think Caden Stearns is going to be a breakout player for the Broncos on the defensive side of the ball this year. He was a rookie last year. He played safety for us and came in and absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I think he's going to force the Broncos to have to make some really, really difficult choices this coming off season when it comes to certain players, because I think he has the absolute potential of just, setting the league on fire. And if the Broncos don't believe they have a place for him because of other players on the roster, he could very well turn out to be wonderful trade bait, if you will, to allow the Broncos to gain additional picks in the 2023 draft.
I like it.
So Jerry Jeudy, what do you think about the drops? I mean, that's the one thing that everyone says. We know he has the speed, but there's also the drop situation. How do you feel about that, Rich? Do you think he's
what with Jeudy?
Yeah.
Judy's not necessarily the fastest guy in the field. He's never been the fastest guy in the field. What he is a technician. When you watch him running his routes,
refined route runner. Mm-hmm.
It is literally a clinic.
Right, but I'm just having flashbacks to the last game in 2020 when Jerry Jeudy took like a drag route and ran like a 70-yard touchdown on the Raiders. So I was having that's the reason why I associate him with speed in some respects. But you're right.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, but you have to remember. So look at a guy like Keenan Allen, who's not the fastest guy on the field, right? He is certainly by no means would anyone ever say Keenan Allen is like a speedster, right? However, he's almost in some cases downright slow now. But anyways, it's besides the point.
Oh, you had to throw that dig in there.
Oh, you caught that, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I had to throw that in.
So, but when you look at guys like Judy, what he's able to do is through route running and intangible skill sets. And I say intangible, like you can obviously measure and see them, but not many guys have those types of skill sets. I'd argue Renfro does on the Raiders when you watch him run routes. But there's very few guys in the league that have those types of skill sets. Judy does not have that elite speed per se, but he has this real vision of the field and understanding of what to do in certain situations in order to get himself open. So that's, I think, why he burnt you guys for that long touchdown run at the very back end of that season. So I don't necessarily associate him with speed. So I kind of have a bit of I kind of take issue, I guess, almost in some respects to calling him a speedster. I just think he's just a technician.
Okay. Right. Well, let me defend Keenan Allen before we move on, because I can't let that slide. Let me defend Keenan Allen. And I'm going to put Keenan Allen in the same boat. I'm going to put Cooper Kupp in the same regard in certain spaces, Devontae Adams. These guys aren't burners. They're not straight line fast, right? But they're sudden. They're quick. They're twitchy. They know how they're agile. They're very good in shorts, tight spaces. You know, they're really good in the phone booth, as a lot of NFL coaches will tell you. He's really good in the phone booth. That means he can shake you out of the phone booth and get past you. So, you know, it's one of those things where you won't necessarily have high topping speed, but your movement, your quick in and out of cuts and stemming your top of your routes and getting open in man coverage, tight man coverage, which is what Keenan and everybody else is really great at, which makes them really good wide receivers, you know, because you can fall in love with speed all day. And I think I'll even give a shout out to Jacob real quick that, you know, he even talked about Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was just straight line fast when he came out in the league, but what he did work on was his ability to run routes, and that what made him deadly. Because the legit 4.2 speed person with elite route running is a masterpiece of wide receiver that you want to have. So I want to say that if you have one of those two things or both, then you're definitely a dominant figure, and that's what makes you a lot of money in the league. So I think that's where it lands for me when it comes down to receivers and how they make their money.
So, Coach, if I can tie that together with what we spoke about at the beginning of the show, that is exactly the type of thing that I was talking about with regards to some of these other players. They've been so used to relying on the one thing that kind of set them apart from all of their peers, the fact that they were just simply better. Tyreek Hill, obviously throughout the entirety of his football career and probably life for that matter, was probably always the fastest dude even on the playground, on the field, right. like just like not even close, right? Like not even close, right?
Yeah, he's crawling fast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even at the NFL level, he was faster than pretty much everyone on the field,
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But what is the one thing he did? Look, I mean, we can all make comments about his personal life and go in that route, but that's not where I'm going. If you look straight at football skill set and talent, what did he then do? He said, okay, if I want to be seen as more than just the cheetah, like the fastest dude that you probably ever seen on a football field, what do I need to do to ensure that I can stay in the league a long time and make a lot of money? I need to learn to run routes and not just rely on my speed. Now, as much as we can slag on him for all of his personal stuff, that shows a lot of self-awareness.
It does.
Because most guys that have that type of speed are going to bank on that all day long, and in some respects until it's too late. He somehow, I don't know how, but he somehow was able to have some, kind of self-perspective, if you will, and say, I need to do this. And he did it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was not fun playing against him.
Listen, I think all faces when he got traded. Listen, I know Jacob cried, crocodile tears, but I was, thank God. Bye, Felicia. I said bye, Felicia. Like
it was a great day. Yeah,
it was a great day for us.
Yeah,
he was a nightmare. He changed the way you played the entire offense, and that's why I said that offense is not going to be the same, because he literally made you defend them a completely and utterly different way. Now you can play more, base defense and scheme up things differently against them, because you don't have anybody that can, get open against one-on-one coverage on the outside, or you can take the top off your defense at any moment at given time. One play, he can take a 10-yard dig and take it to the house like he did against the Bills. It just don't happen every day. So he can have fun in the AFC East. We see you later. We thank you for leaving.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing, though, is like the Chargers and the Raiders, did something different than the Chiefs, and the Broncos haven't had to make this decision yet because Jerry Jeudy's contract's not up till after 2024. Chiefs, instead of paying Tyreek Hill over $20 million a year,
Right.
decided to trade him. Broncos don't have the situation. They don't have a receiver at over $20 million. Chargers paid Mike Williams roughly $20 million a year.
Right.
I'm not sure how much Keenan Allen is already making, but close to that, right?
About the same, yeah.
About the same. And the Raiders paid Devontae. So, like, is this a good decision? Because now we have, Deebo Samuel is trying to get the bag. Deontay Johnson of the Steelers is trying to get the bag. DK Metcalf's going to probably ask for $20 million plus. Is it worth it this day and age to pay a wide receiver $20 million a year? Did the Chiefs make the right decision trading away Tyreek Hill? I think they should have paid Tyreek Hill because I don't think McCole Hardman and whatever draft pick they get this year is going to be as special as Tyreek Hill. That's my opinion. You can't. I think Andy Reid is getting a little cocky in thinking that he could just find another Tyreek Hill.
You can't. It's
You
one
can't.
of a kind.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And again, I'm singing praises that he traded him. But if I was them, I would have paid him.
Yeah.
I would have paid him. He's a nuclear weapon. You don't find those every day. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, none of those guys in the draft are going to beat Tyreek Hill, especially day one. It's going to take them some time to even become even closer to the level of production that he's been giving them over the past 4 to 5 years. So I definitely would have paid him. I'd have paid him whatever he wanted.
I have a different take. I wouldn't have.
Okay.
I just don't think so because I think they got the best out of him, and I think that at some point in the very near future, Father Time is going to catch up with Tyreek. At some point, his fast twitch muscle is going to start to slow, and he won't be able to continue to. It's not that he won't be able to be fast off the line. It's that secondary burst that you see after he catches the ball now that I think is going to start to fade for him. That's going to be more and more challenging for him to maintain as he continues his career. And I think you've already started to see cornerbacks come into the league that are capable of keeping up with him. And I'm also looking ahead at what we've seen in the draft in 2020, 2021, and probably coming up in 2022, in the upcoming draft, where wide receivers are becoming more and more technical and also faster. Not Tyreek fast, but certainly getting close to. And so I think you can kind of compensate for that by having guys from the draft fill in those roles. And I think that's part of the reason why some of the more competent teams that don't need to reach, for example, the Chiefs have a solid quarterback. So I think they feel that they can actually then bring in another wide receiver and probably fill that void in the 2022 draft. Whereas Miami is basically grasping at straws just to make themselves relevant again. So they want to try and find a fast wide receiver to complement and get on their roster to make their subpar quarterback room look better.
And the Dolphins are also trying to cover up all the Brian Flores stuff and paying him to tank. So they're just like, how do we get Dolphins fans to never think about this again? We get Tyreek Hill. We get the best tackle. We get Raheem Mostert running back, right? Like they spend so much money and they are loaded right now.
Skeletons in that closet because the moment that stuff started to kind of simmer, the Brady stuff and the Sean Payton stuff started to come up. So they can't, the bones that keep falling out. The bones keep falling out of the closet. They can't duck it. They can't duck it at all. But I get it. They were trying to make it go away. And it really didn't work at all. But yeah, again, and like you said, they're trying to cover up the idea of a mediocre quarterback room. Because like I said, anybody in that room, including Teddy Bridgewater, and matter of fact, you can put Teddy Bridgewater arm and Tua's arm together, and they still don't make Mahomes's. So
no,
they're trying to cover up for it, and trying to overcompensate by putting multiple weapons around him in order to make him seem like a competent quarterback. No,
I think that's fair. So we've kind of covered a bunch of the players in terms of OTAs. We kind of covered some news around the NFL. Two other topics that we should probably cover off because I think they're both relevant. One is Deebo Samuel, and I think it's also critical and important for everyone here in the chat, and thank you for joining the show, guys, that we kind of name our one draft pick that we would really like to see for each of our teams. So maybe we start with the draft pick because I think we can probably blast through those pretty quickly and then maybe end the show with Deebo Samuel and our takes on it. Willie, maybe we'll start with you. Who do you think the Raiders should be absolutely targeting in the draft?
Well, we're hearing rumors that Devontae Wyatt from Georgia may fall, but I don't know how true that is. I think he's just too talented and someone's going to take him no matter what. that would be a guy. If there's any way that this guy even falls to the second round, I think you trade up to get him. And then I think I said this last show where Falele, you just go for that at tackle because he's huge. But honestly, when you're picking in the third round, I don't feel the same excitement for the draft that I did last year, and it sucks that it's in Vegas this year too. And at the same time, I'm just like, last year I was like, I was freaking out. Who are we going to pick with our first round pick? Who are we going to get in the second round? Now it's just like the enthusiasm's gone for me. And a lot of Raider Nation too. Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah,
I definitely get that. Yeah, it sucks not be in the early rounds when you're hosting this. You're the city hosting. Yeah. Right. For me, if I had like my absolute positive dream, like if I had I could just rub the lamp and say I can get whoever I want. I would want Sauce Gardner. I'm a defensive guy. I'm always going to lean towards the defense first. If I can have Sauce Gardner, J.C. Jackson, and Asante Samuels in my secondary with Khalil and Bosa rushing the passer, oh, good luck throwing the ball. Good luck.
That would be good.
Yeah, because there's no questions about Sauce. Like he's everything that people have said he is, and he's checked all the boxes. There's some question about Stingley and other guys that are Trent McDuffie and those guys. They have some chinks in their armor or criticisms that people can't really get over. But nobody's ever doubted what Sauce can be. He's probably going to be the first corner taken in the draft. So if we had that ability to get him, I would take Sauce Gardner first. Now, realistically, I would say that I would hedge my bet on Olave or Williams if they're there at 17. I would not trade up. I did like 1,000 mocks, and what it's going to cost us to trade up is not worth it because I feel like you can still get the same comparable talent at 17 that you could get at 10 or 5 or whatever you would trade up to get the air quote guy that you really want. So whoever lands with us, be it a tackle or a wide receiver, I would do that first. So anywhere between Charles Cross, Raymond, Bernhard Raymond, he's the guy I like. I'm pretty sure Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu are not going to be there at 17. But I would definitely pick if Jameson Williams falls because of his ACL. You don't even think about it; just hand the card in. That's my biggest take.
So then you're moving on from Josh Palmer then, because that would kind of get rid of Palmer's role, wouldn't it?
Yeah, in a sense. Well, actually, honestly, truly, I think Jalen Guyton would be more in danger of losing his spot when he's healthy because he's a speed guy right now. Palmer's not a burner. He's a possession guy. So I would say that he's more in line to lose his job in the slot for Jameson over Palmer, because honestly, truly, and again, Guyton's only on a 1-year deal. So after this year, he can just go off into the ether and we'll just keep going with Jameson. But if he's there at 17, ACL or not, you take it.
I think that's an interesting one. So the one guy you didn't mention, and I'm surprised, I'm going to be honest, is Jordan Davis.
So
Willie spoke of like the mountain of a man that is Falele on the offensive tackle side, who was just enormous. And then you kind of missed on the defensive side of that, which I'm going to be honest, Jordan Davis has actually been mentioned in multiple mocks going to potentially to the Chargers, which I am not a fan of because I love Jordan Davis and I don't want our running backs going against him.
Listen, I don't blame you, but I would say my only knock on Jordan Davis is that with teams that are high power offensively, you will run a lot more nickel in sub packages, and you would probably run 40 to 50% in sub packages, which he can't play. He's a base package run stopping guy. That's all he's known for, and he's really good at it at this moment. Now he would have to work on his pass rushing abilities and get that up to speed. But until he's such time, day one, he's a run stopper. So anytime you're out of base package, he's off the field. If you look at Georgia's tape and the things that he's done in the past season, he probably played maybe 30 to 40 snaps a game at best in a 60 to 70 snap game. So that type of production, I can't value that over a perennial wide receiver or an O lineman that we honestly truly would need. So I would rate O lineman or wide receiver higher than Jordan Davis. But if there's no other options that we really, really like, and he's there, the linemen are gone, the receivers that we like are gone, then why not? The run defense will be stout. But which is a very glaring need for us. But I would rank him lower than taking a wide receiver or O lineman in that spot.
No, I think that's fair. I'm going to blast through these. So I'm being super realistic. I think that we have a potential of a run on edge. We have a potential on a run on wide receiver. We have a potential of run on even some of the interior defensive linemen, just because there's basically a group that are kind of all at the very, very top. And then there's a pretty big gap between that second tier at a lot of those positions. And while I want the Broncos to draft an interior defensive lineman really early, because I think that's one of our major needs, I don't think we do it, and unless we trade up. So, I mean, if we trade up, all bets are off. But I have two guys in mind. Willie kind of stole my thunder with I was hoping for Daniel Falele to potentially slide into that back end of the second. He's my guy. I think he's perfect for what we do. He's got a great blend of size, speed, kind of that road grader, but he's sneaky fast. And then the other guy that I really like, you even covered him too, Coach. I'm not a fan of this. My notes are all getting stolen from me, but I like Bernard Randman. I think he'd be a great convert to right tackle. He showed he's got the ability to learn a new position in less than 2 years.
Yes.
And I think that's something that a lot of folks here may not realize, that he used to be a tight end, and in less than 2 years, he was converted from a tight end to a left tackle.
There you
and
go.
I believe that he is more than capable of making a quick transition at the NFL level after being effectively one of the top left tackles now in the NFL draft, to move over to right tackle. And I believe that he'd be able to fit that position for the Denver Broncos, especially considering we're going outside zone, which requires a little bit more speed and being able to move to get to that second level. So those are my two guys. I think Falele, if he's there, is basically the run up and hand in the card. And I think the guy that's more likely to be there is probably Bernard Raymond.
You know what bothers me about Falele, and this is what bothers me, the same thing about Mekhi Becton. They're too big at that for NFL. The NFL game. He's 380 pounds. Becton was like 360. Like those guys that weigh that much, it's too much torque on your body when you're trying to contort at playing tackle. Like they were guard, it might be a little bit different. I think the Trent Brown reminds me of a guy that's really, really tall, really stout, really big guy. So the idea of you being agile, instead of just being a power guy, you have to be agile at a tackle position, especially with speed rushers. So I tend to think that bigger guys have a lot of lower leg injuries early on, which gives me pause. If he's a later round pick, then that's one thing. If he's third, fourth round, then okay, you take a stab at him. But if he's using a higher round pick on him, he gets hurt on you right early, then you might regret it.
I agree, except for these younger guys. So you have to remember, these younger guys played in the college game today. And the college game today is all about speed, generally speaking, quickness, mobility, all that kind of stuff. And so I think what you had for 4 years, give or take, was a bit of a disconnect, where you had a lot of these really big guys from college that were maybe in like D2 schools or from schools that were kind of aggressively running the ball, that were coming into the NFL and that weren't prepared. I think the college game has completely shifted. So you now have these younger, bigger dudes that are coming in that are, Falele has played against speed guys. He's played against power guys. He's played against all these types of players. He's still going to have to learn the ins and outs of the NFL game, because the best players that he's ever played against in college pale in comparison compared to the worst players he's going to play against in the NFL. So you're going to have a learning curve, and that's to be expected. But I think that he has shown that the wear and tear at the speed versus his size, he's shown that his body can stand up for it, or to it rather. The Raiders had a guy on their offensive line, and I'm gapping on his name, who was just mammoth on the right hand.
Trent Brown, was it?
Trent Brown.
Trent Brown, yeah.
No, it was another guy. I will find. I'll find it for next. Pardon me, what?
Back in the day, like a long time ago,
Robert? Just a couple years ago.
If it was in the past few years, it would just be either Trent Brown.
He weighed the most. Trent Brown was
Trent Brown was a mountain of an individual. Don't get me wrong. He was just huge. But you had another guy on your offensive line who was just a very, very large guy. And I think that there's another guy in that offensive line that showed that a really big guy can still move quick and block well. And I think I think that as the league, college in particular, has progressed, it has now come to the NFL to show that these really big guys can still move. And I think a lot of the NFL head coaches are hesitant, and I think wrongfully so now, given what we've seen.
Yeah, Gabe Jackson was about 330 pounds, so it might be him. They gave Jackson 340. Yeah, so he was a big guy. He was a guard, but he was a big guy. Yeah, that was a good call. Good call, John. Yeah, Gabe Jackson was a big guy. Yeah, he still plays in the league. He's just not with the Raiders anymore.
Yeah, he's 330. He's in Seattle now. Yeah, so I guess he's big. I mean, I guess when you're thinking comparing it to Trent Brown, like that extra 30 pounds is super crazy.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
But now I don't want Falele because now I'm having PTSD of Trent Brown. And Trent Brown, like, there's like a meme you can see online where his weight with the Raiders compared to with the Patriots last year. And he looks lean with the Patriots and he looks like, you know, he's going on The Biggest Loser or something. He's with the Raiders or something like that. Right. So he did. I mean, Falele will probably go downhill if he joins the Raiders. So maybe we need a more lean right tackle.
Yeah, we'll see. We will see. Yep. So, how do we feel about this Deebo Samuel's rumors here? I'm very curious exactly what the issue is because he's saying I think it's usage. And the way they're using him.
Yep.
It's not that's not necessarily about the money. It's about the usage factor. And they, basically lining him up more so in the backfield, treat him as a running back, and he's worrying about his injury, his health and things of that nature. But what does it land for you guys, and what is the likelihood of him being traded between now and the draft?
Ooh, I'm going to give it I still say it's 50-50 because ultimately what he's trying to do is he's trying to look like he does not give a shit. He will leave this team. He will move from San Francisco if he has to. He will hold out. He will not show up to practice, right? But he's doing all this in an effort to just get a deal from the San Francisco 49ers, right? I think at the end of the day, this is just my hunch. I just feel like at the end of the day, he wants a deal there. Yeah, you could request a trade. But ultimately, just like with Le'Veon Bell happened with the Steelers, these guys, the only leverage they have is just to not show up and withhold money. And so will he get to that point where he will withhold not playing, right? I don't think so. I think he's just trying to pressure them, and maybe we'll see some sort of compromise where they give him an extension early. Because if I'm not mistaken, he was drafted in 2019, right? So basically, this is his last year. Maybe you can exercise a fifth-year option. He's trying to go the route that we were just talking about earlier. You don't do the fifth-year option. You get locked in more years than that. You get guarantees because he's basically a running back and for 70% of the time. So,
well, that's the thing. He wasn't a first-round pick, so he has no fifth-year options.
He's only got 4 years.
So he's like in Renfro's position. Okay.
Yeah.
And Metcalf.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Who you got, Rich?
So we had an in-depth discussion with the MHRT group, and I'm not going to disclose who said what and all that other stuff. But I think this is my take on it, and I'll disclose this openly. Is I originally had what you said, Willie, which was I thought that Deebo Samuel was pulling a Le'Veon Bell. I thought he was going back to San Francisco and say, "You're using me as a wideout and a running back. I want to be paid as both." As in collectively, so give me, 25 to 30 mil a year because you're using me as both. I want to be paid not just as a wide receiver, but I want to get wideout money and running back money combined since you're using me that way. Now, that was my original take. I was since corrected actually from one of the MHRT guys, and I do appreciate getting some additional information. Apparently some other insider details that come out that Deebo just does not want to be used as a running back. And now that's an angle that kind of hit me a little bit out of left field because most guys simply want to get on the field as often as possible. However, running backs are the one position at the NFL level
don't get paid.
That they don't get paid, but they have almost a vertical decline as they get older. And that I thought was interesting. And that to me makes a lot of sense. So San Francisco wants to continue to pay him as a hybrid running back / wideout. They're probably not, they're either not wanting to pay him as a wide receiver and more like a running back, or B, are not willing to merge the two positions to kind of come up with that hybrid pay scale that we were kind of hinting at. And if Deebo is coming at it from another vantage point, which is saying, I don't want to be a running back at all, I want to be a wideout only, then you can literally just have a clashing of kind of A and B, and they will never come to any kind of an agreement. And I do wonder if that's in fact what's happening, because that to me makes way more sense.
Yeah, I mean all those things could definitely happen. I mean, it could go any of those ways. They're definitely excellent, educated takes. I'm not sure where it lands for me, honestly. I think that it's. I guess when you play in Kyle Shanahan's system, it's like you basically are a hybrid player, and based upon how he wants to scheme you up. He has always all these type of exotic ways he wants to be able to utilize guys in the run game and the pass game. And I got a sneaky suspicion that we were talking that they would probably angling try to draft a receiver in the mid rounds that would kind of replace the production that Debo had on the outside, and would ultimately allow him to play more running back because they lost Mostert in free agency, and they got the kid. Oh my God, he was on my fantasy team this year. Was it? I can't remember his name off the top of my head for some reason.
Mitchell?
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
So they had him, but they was looking at. Of course, Debo was more productive in the backfield as a ball handler. So, he could be looking at it from a standpoint that he really wants to protect his health and his longevity. He wants to be paid more than once because he feel like if he get paid, to your point, Rich, if he gets paid like a running back, that's going to be the only contract he ever gets.
I don't think it's necessarily getting paid like a running back as long as he gets paid like a running back and a receiver combined. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be okay with that as a large payday up front. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately the problem is that if he's continued to use as that mostly running back with this dusting of wide receiver role, mm-hmm. He probably has gotten coaching from proper people outside to say your body's not going to be able to take it.
Yes.
And I think that is fair because let's put it this way. There are not very many Frank Gores in the world.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't exist. Like they come around once in a generation. You have Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore, and they are 2 of 2. That is it.
And it would be different if like as a running back, they used him as like more of a third down back. Where he's mainly receiving, running back, and if it was only jet sweeps. Now there's some big hits that you can get jet sweeps from a safety if they're running for a long time. But the fact that he's doing this inside running type of thing, and he's also a wide receiver where he's doing passes in the middle of the field where you're going to get cracked, and you can't hit a defenseless receiver, but it happens all the time, and then a flag just happens. So he's almost getting like the worst of both worlds. He's getting the worst of the running back position where you're running straight up the middle, and he's getting passes from the inside. Like if he was getting outside passes the whole time for contested catches, that's one thing. But and then he's probably looking at Brandon Ayuk and like, okay, you guys don't have this guy doing any of this shit. Why am I doing this?
Right. And I think they're trying to bring Brian Ayuk up to speed because they want to maybe get him more targets because Debo was legit taking all the targets as a wide receiver. So they figure, well, we can make him a matchup nightmare in the backfield and let Ayuk be on the outside. He can get the outside targets from the quarterback, and we can just use Debo wherever we feel like as a gadget guy. And I'm sure he don't want to be marketed or paid like a gadget guy. And we all know that the Le'Veon Bell deal didn't work out for anybody. So I'm sure if you're looking at that perspective, if you wanted that type of number, it didn't work out for Le'Veon Bell, and I doubt it will work out for him either. And again, he will probably run himself into the ground trying to do both.
This is an interesting take. So I actually think that. So I've heard Debo liking a tweet where he's worth like $25 million a year, that kind of stuff. And I think that lends itself to that as a general comment of saying that he's kind of got the Le'Veon Bell mentality of saying, if you're going to use me like that, then I want multiple Brinks trucks, right?
Yeah, right.
If you're going to kind of equate that into kind of what he's looking for, but ultimately, I don't think that that's what he's going to get. And I think Le'Veon Bell, to your point, Coach, showed what teams are thinking of guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
They are not willing to value them at that level. And at which point I think Debo is pushing, if assuming that what we spoke about in our group chat is correct. He's right in saying, then fine, use me as a wideout, and I don't want to ever see running back snaps again. Right. And if you're not gonna basically agree to that, peace, I'm out.
Right. Well, so would it be ironic though? Let's say hypothetically that they are going to part ways and they trade him. So and they trade him to the Jets, who was the ones that gave Le'Veon Bell the deal to pay him air quote like a receiver and a running back. They were basically redoing the same insanity all over again. and then we'd be right back to square one with that whole deal. Could be highly ironic for me.
Robert Saleh has connections.
He does. Then you pay him $35 million to be a dual hat guy, and then you turn around and you get the same production that he got from Le'Veon Bell.
Well, I actually think that Le'Veon Bell's issue, and I'm going to take a page out of so Shannon Sharp, the legendary Hall of Fame tight end for the Broncos, has come out multiple times and said this. If you step away from the game even for a year, your body almost forgets how to absorb a hit.
Yeah, this is true.
And I actually think that is one of the more insightful things that I've heard from any TV personality in terms of, talking about football in any contact sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a completely fair comment to make. So I think what Le'Veon Bell made a mistake of is holding out for too long and not taking a better deal the year that he ended up sitting out. And I think that hurt him long-term. In my opinion, I think if Debo is willing to allow himself to get traded and continue to be used as this dual threat player, but then get his multiple Brinks trucks from the Jets, which I think they can afford to do with him, then I think that is his best bet for his career, is to keep the role he has now, but get paid for it.
Yeah, interesting take. Definitely interesting take. But I mean, we can all blame this on Willie and his Raiders because they messed up the wide receiver market with Devontae. So that's really the issue. Like, we're not talking $20 million that Mike Williams got. We're talking 25 to 30 at minimum. Like, don't come to the table unless you have $25 million in hand. I need that right up front. If we don't have $25 million to talk about, then we can't do business.
And even the former Raiders, Zay Jones, got paid by the Jaguars for $10 million a year.
He did.
And no Raider fan last year, and I like Zay Jones, would say that he's $10 million a year.
Right. Yeah.
And then and the Jaguars also paid. I'm blanking on his name, Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk. Yep.
And now it's just like you just straight up have to pay.
Right.
That's why I asked this earlier. Did the Chiefs make the right call? Because now it just seems like you straight up have to pay a number one wide receiver $20 million. It's becoming like a pass rusher. Like every elite pass rusher is $20 million.
Christian Kirk walked in to Trent Baalke's office with a stocking cap over his face and a water gun and said, "Give me all your money," and he agreed to it. He agreed to it. It was rough. He had never had a 1,000-yard season, and he garnered that much money. Like upwards about $80 million in the entirety of his contract, and never had a 1,000-yard season.
And he's essentially always played with the number one on the team. If it wasn't Larry Fitzgerald, it's D-Hop. So
yep.
To me, that's always like, what the hell, man?
Exactly. Yeah, that they could have buyer's remorse for that one for sure. But at least he got a target. At least Trevor Lawrence has a target now.
Yeah, no excuses. I guess.
No, yeah. I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, Debo's a great player, but at the end of the day, his yardages have been completely mixed bag in terms of one position versus the other. So I think when we're looking at his overall value, you're guessing at that point because his production has been split.
Mm-hmm.
And the chat's going wild right now as I'm trying to keep up with some of the comments. But as you're looking at Debo in terms of what he's looking at, so whether or not he goes to, whether or not the Browns try to make a play for him or the Jets make a play or some of these other teams, the challenge is that he has not proven himself to be that truly elite wide receiver, nor has he proven to be a truly elite running back. He's effectively carved out a really unique kind of role, which is I play both really well. And that is what he does in the NFL at the NFL. And that is his secret sauce, if you will.
Yeah.
And because he hasn't been able to excel, it's like, let's put it this way. He hasn't had that 1,100 or 1,200 yard season in terms of yardages and cut touchdowns, et cetera, as a wideout exclusively. He's always blended it between both the wideout role and the running back role. So if he had leaned one versus the other more heavily, I think we'd be having a much different discussion right now.
Yeah. I think that has a lot to do with the way Kyle Shanahan calls his offense. He's run-centric first. He's run centric first, and then he's play action and RPO pass after that. So most likely for them to have a 1,000-yard receiver or more than one is slim to none. But it'd be interesting to see if he got traded. If he was solely played as a wide receiver next season, would he have a better productive year as a wide receiver? We just have to wait and see.
Now, can we all agree that the one place we don't want him in is the Chiefs?
Absolutely, 100%. No, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like can we just all collectively say yes? And
Of course.
Thumbs
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, okay,
Definitely
good.
thumbs
All right.
up. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Stay out of
All
here. Stay out of this area where we don't need you.
Yeah, because I certainly don't want him playing against my team ever. Well, if I can help it.
Listen, we got rid of one nightmare. We don't need another.
Yeah. We just got rid of one. Let's just call that a day. So, guys, I think that just about does us for the show today. We've had a great time with you in the chat. Remember, all of our links to all of our channels are below. We have, some of us have daily pods, some of us have weekly pods, but we really do appreciate you subscribing to our channels, keeping up on all of the various team news. And we will be back with all four of us next Wednesday on the Wild Wild West at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for all of the news coming up. And it will be pretty heavy, I think, draft based on timing and whatnot.
Yep.
So, guys, anything else you guys want to say before we head out?
No, I just can't wait till next week, man.
I'm stoked.
Yeah.
So, guys, with that in mind, we will see you next week.
Peace out.